Hey, MCARBO brother, I'm Chris Nelson, president of MCARBO. Really excited to introduce a new max control recoil spring kit for your 1911 pistols. Comes with 3 recoil springs, an 18 pound, 16 pound, 14 pound for your 1911 pistol. Most important thing is the length of barrel and caliper. That'll determine which ones will work for what. Now, it'll work for a wide variety of manufacturers. There's also a chart on the website. Let's get on over to the tabletop, put this baby in. Before we get started, let's go ahead and check our firearms together, make sure they're clear. Check the chamber, check the bolt face, check the magazine well. This firearm's clear. The MCARBO 1911 pistols max control recoil springs includes 3 different spring options that allows you to custom tune your 1911. So depending on the caliber and the length of the barrel is what's going to determine which type of spring you're going to use. Now it's easier to stick to a middle of the road spring like the 16 pound spring you'll see here in a second. As you can see, none of the springs are exactly alike. So from the 14 pound, 16 pound, 18 pound, there's a big difference here. You can notice that the 16 pound is much shorter. All 3 springs are a different gauge wire, different length, different number of coils, etc. So it does have a massive impact on what we've designed them to do. Another reason for the variety in weight here is that if you shoot heavier loads like the plus P rounds, you want to use a heavier recoil spring. It'll help absorb some of that recoil, some of the battering of the frame. It's going to protect your firearm and make it much more enjoyable to shoot, stabilize and control the pistol much better with an 18 pound recoil spring, especially if you're using the plus P heavier loads. If you're shooting lighter loads, it's advisable to use a 14 pound recoil spring, allowing it to cycle much more effectively. Too heavy a spring would cause it to not cycle completely and therefore giving you a failure to feed or jamming the pistol. Now overall, what you need to remember, if your pistol fails to lock back after installing a new recoil spring, fails to lock back, you need to go with a lighter recoil spring. It is too stiff of a spring. Now that's just kind of a down and dirty how you would go about selecting the right recoil spring for your pistol. Most importantly is barrel length and caliber. Now the installation is real simple and straightforward. Take a wooden dowel or something non-abrasive, push down on the recoil spring plug, all right, allowing you enough room and clearance to turn that barrel bushing clockwise or to the right, and then slowly ease up on that recoil spring plug. And it's going to want to fly away on you, so you got to kind of walk it off a little bit there. And it's just that simple and easy. And you'll see the spring's right there, easy to remove. We just slide it right out. All right, and you can take a look at your factory spring. It's likely if you've had it for some time and you put a few hundred rounds through it, it's already taken a good set and kind of diminished its strength a little bit. So it's very advisable to keep some of these recoil springs on hand. And you're gonna, like I said, have to shoot this and figure out what's the best fit for you. But this is just a quick intro on how to install it. You can see your recoil spring guide is inside there. So what you want to do is just center it up. And you'll know the spring is captured the guide. If you pull up, you can see the guide. It's captured right there in the center. Real simple and easy, right? See that? You can see the stainless steel guide there in the center of the coils in the spring now. So just push down on it. Then go ahead and slide your recoil spring plug back on top of the recoil spring. Push down on the recoil spring and recoil spring plug. Make sure it's in there. Then push that barrel bushing, right? See how it just captured that lip right there, which is a lifesaver. Next, you'll either take your dowel or just push a little bit harder on that recoil spring guide to add enough clearance for that barrel bushing to turn back center and lock into place. And then you're good to go. And then it's a matter of just testing. You know, this is the 18 pound spring, so it's pretty stiff. But this is a full-size 1911 5-inch barrel. Now, if you do need to measure the barrel, go ahead and disassemble it, pull out your barrel and measure it from end to end. Really a fantastic improvement for reducing felt recoil and muzzle flip. The stiffer the spring, obviously the more control you have, but a little bit harder to rack that slide. Now, if you're shooting heavy loads, like I said before, this is advisable to use a heavier spring to help you minimize some of that felt recoil and that frame battering. You know, you don't want that slide and frame to just slam real hard against each other, especially with those higher power loads. So the goal is to dial it in, figure out which recoil spring to use. Real simple and easy. I like leaving the barrel bushing installed. That's why we turn it clockwise or to the right, because that way there it's captured. You don't have to take it completely out just to make this simple adjustment. So I'm going to set the 18 pound spring aside for now. It's handy to have these bags too. You might as well just keep them. Now we'll go ahead and put the 16 pound spring in, see how that feels. And that's something else too you can do, is just feel it. You know, install it, see if it's to your liking as far as stiffness goes. All right, you can see I got the guide rod there captured in the spring, so it's centered up. But it's real easy to tell. You could also use a flashlight just to look down there and make sure it's actually captured and centered. but naturally that's what it wants to do, so it's not that challenging. 16-pound recoil spring's much easier to install, obviously. Feels much more manageable, right? So it's much easier to actually rack the slide. You know, I think that would be preferred. The 16 pounds, middle of the road, really good. A little bit higher than what your typical factory recoil spring is. All right, now let's go ahead and pull out the 16 pound and put in the 14 pound and see how that feels. All right, same process. You'll get really good at this by the time you're done checking them all out, which is good, and that's the whole point. Get more familiar, comfortable, and confident with your firearm. That is the idea, and that's what's nice about doing your own work. All right, 14-pound recoil spring going in. Let's make sure we got that guide rod captured. All right, I can see the guide rod right there. Good. Got the recoil spring guide on there, and then the barrel lug locked in place. Beautiful. Oh man, that is light. Yeah, so definitely your preference and your liking. You can definitely tell the 14-pound recoil spring is much lighter than the factory recoil spring. Factory recoil spring somewhere in the 15-pound range, so you've got a couple options whether you're going higher or lower. This is a great set to keep on hand. You've got 14, 16, 18-pound recoil springs. You can really dial in your 1911 and give yourself the best performance. Like I said, there's a ton of things to look at when it comes to changing your recoil spring. If you're getting more malfunctions, if you're getting more failures to return to battery while feeding. So failures to return to battery would be the slide not completely locking forward, right? You're getting that slide halfway stuck back a little bit. Another thing to look at would be to compare your recoil springs. See if there's a major difference between the spring you have in there now and the factory spring. So you get a new set of springs. You know, first thing you're going to do is compare the two. I've got the factory spring here on top, and I've got the new set here on the bottom. You can see the new set's longer. It hasn't been compressed as long. It hasn't been worn out. It's brand new. Usually brand new springs will be longer because they haven't actually been in the firearm under tension and compression for any length of time. So your OEM factory spring is going to be shorter, it's going to be worn out, but most importantly is comparing how they feel when you're racking that slide back and forth, and also the function. If it's not functioning correctly, I'm going to go ahead and put that 16-pound recoil spring back in, since that's where I'm going to stick to for now. Right in the middle of the road, definitely what I prefer. Feels the best. Yeah, awesome. Really fantastic. Nice, easy way to improve that performance immediately. And definitely if you're having any sort of failure to feeds or any sort of malfunctions at all, I would start with the recoil spring. Real cheap, easy, efficient way to improve the operation and also dial it in a little bit better depending on what type of ammo you're shooting. Definitely have to replace springs. They do wear out, especially the factory springs. Higher grade American spring steel here. Well, there you have it, guys. A fantastic way to improve the performance, reliability, and function of your 1911 pistol. Really phenomenal. Really like the way this will handle the recoil mitigation and muzzle flip. Great improvement for the 1911 pistol. Works for a wide variety of manufacturers, but most importantly, barrel length and caliper when deciding which one to use, but ultimately, it's your preference. And really the name of the game is to minimize malfunctions and improve performance. Really excited to hear your feedback. Thank you, MCARBO Brotherhood, for your ideas and your support. And as always, happy shooting.